Ideje felőni egy streamet. Mentünk. Most döntsd el, hogy milyen kategóriában vagyok. Azt mondja, különleges események újni. Oké. Fear the fear in my enemy's eyes. Csak ide értünk végre, sziasztok csibék! Így jobb lesz. Még talán egy picit vissza, hogy... Ajjó! Jerusalem bells are ringing. There was never an honest one. Szia, Eszter! Oké, egyelőre ez is meg vagyunk. Jó fejelizád! Ja, itt van zsebünk. Oké, szépen lassan sikerül nekem is elhelyezkednem végre. Most estem ide a székembe, szó szerint a konyhából. Egész eddig pizzát dagasztottam. Oh, whatever wanna be king. Bevásároltam pizzához, várjunk, én mindent elraktam, amit vásároltam? Remélem. Remélem, hogy mindent sikerült elpakolni. Szia, Tüsi! Kész állsz a világuralomra? Hoppá! Ne haragudj! Visszadom a csati pontodat, véletlenül nem dobott. Még nem sikerült azt is beizzítani. Jó reggelt neked is, Milo! Reggel annyira nincs, de hogy őszinte legyek, én is kb. Annyira vagyok éber meg felpörögve, mintha reggel lenne. Szia, Benkara! Jó mindenkinek! Parancsolj, visszajöttek szolgáltatva a pontjaid, és mostantól elvileg megdobható vagyok. Oké. Tessék, pótoltam. Jaj. Freedom. Átírom gyorsan a now meg a today parancsot, és ha ezekkel meg vagyok csibék, akkor elkezdjük nézni a videókat, amikkel nem tudok csak szubatonon pótolni. Ilyen szubatonon kívül nagyon nincsen olyanom, hogy szabadidő. Rikó most oktató videókat néz. Különféle. Szia, Milú! Videósoktól. Szia, Rotát Roger! Jó! Vagy Roger? Béna vagyok. Jó, azért nem tudom, hogy kinek nem köszöntem még. Sziasztok mindenki! Azt mondja, hogy akiktől nézünk, Mark Brunet. Na, ezt a videót például lehet, hogy Arzén már látta. Sőt, elég nagy esély van rá. A másik, amit nézünk, téged hogy hívnak? Win Giang. Nem tudom megjegyezni nevét. Pedig azért őtőle is sok videót láttam el, és a harmadikról még sose hallottam szerintem. Leila Hormozi. Oké. hogy okosodjon. És ide teszünk egy agy emojit. Szeretem az emojikat. Á, kopasz! Várj egy percet, tükörbe néz. Á! Bolondarzén. Szia, Róka! Ide jött, ösi, bye-bye! Kitartást a melóhoz! Oké. Ütemterv ma... Na várjatok. Riku ma videókat néz. Merch. Póló dizájnt, inkább így mondom. Póló dizájnt tervez. És megpróbálja megcsinálni a fortval. Nem kéne odaírnom, hogy fortval. Igazából akit érdekel, az úgyis rákérdez meg csinálni a saját első merch shopját. Valaki beküldi nekem a csibe-váót? Gyorsan, csibék. Gyorsan. Csak egy váó kell. Egy. Köszönöm. Lássuk, hogy sikerült-e. Siker, oké. Szia, Viki! Anyu, sikerült 9 órát aludnom? 2 nap kellett hozzá, de sikerült. Büszkék vagyunk rád, Milúgyi vagy. Melyik kaktusz? A kaktusz valószínű, hogy kaktuszcraft. Kinek integetünk, nem látom. Szia, kaktusz malac. Szia, Zsini! Kettő kaktuszunk is van, gyerekek. Az egyik süni. Még nap. Viszont akkor a zenének így, hogy megcsináltam a 2 parancsot. Így igazából most már maga a stream az elkezdődhet, meg a videónézés is. Csak még egyet fújok. Még egyet fújok. Egész eddig takarítottam, meg kivittem a szemetet, meg aztán a másik szemetet is, ami meg ki is szakadt, úgyhogy vehetett a takarítás, aztán bolt, aztán tagasztás, és most konkrétan ki nem látok a fejemből, annyi dolgom van. Egyszerre jó és rossz dolog is, hogy ennyi dolgom van. De megoldjuk, gyerekek, és azért köszi szépen a javítást, már kinn is van a harmadik sort is. Úgyhogy gyerekek, Riku végre sortokkal nincsen maradva, vodokkal nagyon csúnyán el van maradva ezzel szemben, úgyhogy ma nagy esélye volt feltöltést is valahol be kéne írnom saját magamnak a today parancsba, hogy ne felejtsem el. Vodokat tölt fel, aztán ne felejtsem. Vagy egy 8 voddal még el vagyok maradva, azt hiszem. De mindegy, utalérik magunkat. Nem kétségbe esni. Eleve tök nehéz kettőségbe beleesni. Tehát hogyha valaki képes rá, akkor Akkor az Nobel-díjat érdemel. Na, nem tudom, hogy készen álltok-e, én nem, de ettől függetlenül kezdjük az első videóval. Én meg ma pici szortírozok, és majd legyek vadászni. Jó vadászatot az én. IRL vadászat, vagy ilyen game? Mert vannak emberek, akik in-game dolgokat is. Ja, klip vadászni? Oké. Vadon lévő klipek. Jaj. Most szezonális. A kaktusz és a süni ölelkezik, akkor akkor családi ölelkezés történik? Nem tudom. Még nem álltam készen az ilyen jellegű kérdésekre való. Szia, Hóérka! Te vagy a néni! Na, akkor nézzük Kopasz bácsit, hogy mik a javaslatai arra, hogy hogyan csinálj pénzt a rajzaidból. Úgyhogy az én tessék vagy jegyzetelni, vagy pótolni a videót.
Years, and today I want to walk you through every way that I know of making money as an artist. And along the way,
kérdés, halljátok-e?
tell you like which ones I feel are more future-proof and which ones you should be a little cautious going into. I think you'll get a lot of value from this video, so let's get started. Oh, one more thing before we start. Every method on this list depends on two very important things: your skill level and your visibility. You know, even the best artists in the world can make money
néha lehet, hogy
nobody knows.
mutolgatni fogom magam, mert még nem is reggeliztem, úgyhogy most rákcsálom a reggeli hungarot szellemet.
Twitter account, posting on Reddit, posting on forums, on Discord servers, even like smaller platforms like Imagine FX and It's Art magazines. They're all worth exploring, and they're kind of the foundation that everything else is going to be built on. So with that, let's get started. So the first 5 methods would be the ones with the lowest barrier to entry. You can start earning from these even if you're still developing your skills. So I would say like level intermediate and above. So in first, we're going to have commissions. This is how most artists will make their first dollar. Someone likes your style, like not how you dress, but how you draw. And well, they'll just pay you to draw something for them. The first money I ever made was...
Istenem, de bolond vagy. Tehát így magyarázza, hogy ebből szerzi a legtöbb művész a pénzét, hogy megrendelésre dolgozik, ebben igaza is van. És akkor mondja, hogy az embereknek tetszhet a stílusod, nem az, ahogy öltözködsz, ahogy rajzolsz. Hogy nem kiköptem a reggelit.
Through commissions on DeviantArt back in the days. It wasn't much, but it was like real money for doing something that I loved. And I had maybe just like a few thousand followers at that point, like 2,000. Now I will say like the AI effect is definitely real when it comes to commissions to some extent, but I would say in general the demand has remained pretty steady because most people want your style, your art. You know, like for the most part, the people that would commission an artist like you before AI even existed, well, they would still be the same kind of people that would commission you now. Freelance job boards. So websites like Upwork, Fiverr, Behance, those all still have constant demand for illustration work. And it's a pretty good way to land your first like professional credit if you can land one of those gigs. AI has affected this industry to some extent, but it's still holding quite strong. It's one of those that might shrink a bit, but it'll never disappear. Now in third, we have selling digital goods or products.
Amúgy tök babázatos, hogy nem csak azt mondja el, hogy az adott területeken mennyire fogsz jól keresni, hanem azt is hozzáfűzi, hogy manapság mennyire csökkent vagy nőtt az igény az AI miatt. Arra, hogy az emberek továbbra is dolgozzanak azokon a területeken. Eddig ugye fel volt sorolva a megrendelések, a commissionök, illetve a Fiverres meg egyéb ilyen hirdetéses helyekről elvállalni alkalmi munkákat. És sose jönnek a digitális termékek.
Now this one is bigger than most people maybe realize. So like on the artist to artist side, you can think of like brushes for Photoshop, Procreate, Clip Studio Paint, PSD files showing your process. Like all of these consistently sell really well on platforms like QBrush or Gumroad. There's actually also a lot of like self-published comics and a lot of more spicy art. Like if you're willing to put your morals aside, then there's definitely money to be made there. Unfortunately. Or fortunately. I don't know. But now if we move on to like the game developer side,
Szita
you can
más.
sell stuff like environment packs, character models, UI kits, brushes for sculpting software like ZBrush, like whatever goes into making the art of a game, really. QBrush.co, again, is a great marketplace for that, but also others like, Fab and the Unity marketplace. The audience there will be typically like indie developers that don't necessarily have the budget to hire full-time artists. So instead, you can just buy, pre-made assets. Either way, the beauty is the same. You make something once and then you sell it forever. It keeps making money. And this is also largely AI proof, I would say, because
Nagyon erősen gondolkodok, hogy betörök egyébként erre a piacra, de ahol felkaptam a fejemet, mert amúgy ez a videó háttérben játszódott le, miközben takarítgattam, és tökre nem figyeltem arra, ami benne volt. És valamikor, hát így, a következő 3 percben megütötte a fülemet egy olyan zsanra, amire nem gondoltam volna, hogy már kitér, mert tud róla, de ezek szerint tud róla, és büszke vagyok rá, és jár a buksi sibi.
Like the types of assets that you make might change, might evolve over time, but
nem úgy betörés, hóhérka.
And that's not going away. In fourth, we have streamer and
Streamer sets.
So this is a market that barely existed just a couple of years.
Na itt esküszöm azon gondolkodom, hogy Csivikóval, meg Szilúval összefogok, ők csinálják a kódrészt, itt csinálom az artrészt, meg Szilú is az artrészt, és akkor csinálhatnánk overlayeket. De ha nem is overlayeket, akkor is ilyen animált hátterekre tuti lenne igény. Animált hátterekre, youtuber asszetekre lenne egy csomó ötletem.
Years ago, and now it's booming. Like designing custom emotes, badges, overlays, and like channel art for Twitch or YouTube streamers. There's huge volume of demand here because streamers are constantly rebranding themselves, and like new ones are popping up every day almost. And then if we go on the VTuber side, like designing character sheets, and beyond that, like live 2D models, well, that's even more lucrative. Like custom VTuber models will go like to a couple $100 on the low end to several thousands of dollars for like fully rigged models. Personally, I have no experience with that. It's pretty alien to me, but quite fascinating. Now in fifth, we're gonna have prints on demand. So websites like Redbubble, Society6, in print, all of those guys will handle the printing and the shipping. So you basically
És igen, print on demand-dal tervezzük megoldani azt, hogy nektek legyen rikus pólótok. Vagy előre csibés pólótok, mert azt ígértem meg, de lehet, hogy ma, ha belelendülök a pólótervezésbe, akkor csinálok még egyet. Ki akarom próbálni azokat a tipikus, nem monokróm, mert szürke árnyalatos plusz egy dekorszín, mondjuk rózsaszín, és akkor azt rendelhetnétek meg többféle színben. Hello, Szikra! De egyelőre úgy tűnik, hogy találtam nektek egy tök jó pólót, ami unisex, rengeteg méret, kb. Egy heten belül kiszállít, valami kevesebb, mint 3000 forint, és mármint, hogy a szállítással együtt, ha jól matekoltam. És kb. 30-40 féle különböző színben tudtok válogatni, csak annyi, hogy ha a ritkább színekből válogatok, az nem biztos, hogy lesz minden méretben, de a fekete meg a fehér az fix, hogy abból minden méret van, meg a piros is. És hogy ez mikortól lesz elérhető, amint megcsináltam, gyerekek. Úgyhogy remélhetőleg a héten már elérhető lesz. Hát látszott, nem árulnak hóhérka életem.
Upload your art, slap in a bunch of different merch, and then you get a cut of the sales. So of course you could be selling like art prints, but also mugs, like t-shirt, towels, mouse pads, pretty much anything you can print something on. Now, the margins are pretty small, like just a couple of dollars maybe per item, but if you pair that with a decent social media audience, then you can start to rake in some decent passive income, semi-passive income, because you have to keep, promoting it. Now, those platforms are definitely getting flooded with AI garbage, so standing
És igen, ezt nagyon jó, hogy említette. Hogyha valaki ilyesmiben gondolkodik, hogy dizájnol, bögréket, stb. És azokat akarja eladni, árusítani, akkor állandó jelleggel tolni kell a marketinget YouTube shortokban, vagy a YouTube short videókban, meg TikTokon. Folyamatosan tolni. Máshogy nem fog eljutni az emberekhez az, hogy te ezt csinálod. Senki nem fog megtalálni, hogyha ebben a tömegben, hogyha nem reklámozod magad orva szájba.
out will for sure require a very distinct style and, you know, an audience that specifically seeks your work. All right, for this next batch, it'll require a solid reputation or a big following, or both usually. But the earning potential here jumps significantly. So in six,
És most
we'll
jönnek
have
azok a
YouTube
dolgok,
and
amikhez kell, hogy már az emberek ismerjenek téged, de ha ismernek, akkor már előnnyel indulsz.
content creation.
És több
So if you can teach
pénzt
or
elvessétek.
entertain
Content
or just create
creation, hát...
compelling art, content, whatever that might be, YouTube and TikTok are obviously like, fantastic platforms. So you have the ad revenues, you have the sponsorships, and of course the audience that you're building that eventually can become a really good funnel for anything else you might have to sell. Like I started my channel in 2011 just as a side hustle for fun. Like there was no money to be made back then.
El kéne kezdenem zsonglőrködni izékkel, szponzorajánlatokkal.
That hopefully trust me, right? And well, that audience became the foundation for like everything else in my career. The catch is obviously that it takes a lot of time and a lot of consistency. And maybe to not be too self-conscious as well. Because chances are you'll be pretty cringe for a long time if you're anything like me. If I could, you can. Because I'm one of the most introverted person ever. This, not natural at all for me. It took me like a good 10 years to stop cringing whenever I watch back my videos. Maybe longer. But what's cool is that every video you create, well, just keeps working for you forever. It just stays online, which is pretty rare for most kind of work. Now in seventh, we have art streaming. It's kind of related to content creation, but it's pretty different beast. Some artists will make like decent earnings just sharing their process on Twitch or on YouTube Live. So the revenues will range from subscriptions, donations, and if you're big-brained, you can work on your commissions live on stream. So you're getting paid
Egyébként
for art,
igen,
you're
aki
getting paid
csinál
by
megrendelésekre
people
rajzokat,
watching you
azoknak
create
én is
the
csak
art.
ajánlani
And
tudom, hogy
also
akkor
doubles
már
as,
streamelje is.
portfolio work and
Ártani
audience
nem
work.
árt.
So if you're someone who can work on your art and talk to an audience at the same time, like if you enjoy this interactive side of things, well, that might be a great fit. Now in 8, we have Patreon and subscription. So even if you have like a pretty modest following, offering exclusive
Ez az, amit
content,
például
like
Szobaton miatt még csak esélyem se lenne futtatni sikeresen, de ja, azért ott van.
Study what you're doing.
Meg van, akinek
Having, like,
bevált.
private community access maybe, or like early release access. Well, that recurring income can add up pretty quickly. And this is super future proof as long as you're building this, you know, genuine relationship with your audience. And that's something that AI probably won't be able to replicate. You know, that's the same kind of recipe that Sam Does Arts and many others use. Like his video's primary purpose is to funnel people into his Patreon where he can get paid, because ad revenue on YouTube really is insultingly low compared to most other types of channels. And I think going about it this way is way better than having a random sponsored segment in the middle of your videos, like every other YouTube channel. In 9th now we have webtoons and webcomics. So you have platforms like Webtoons or Tapas that will pay creators through like ad revenue sharing and readers like tipping. So if you can tell and illustrate a story and like have a consistent schedule, well, there's a big audience waiting for it. This stuff's super popular. Top creators on those platforms can easily earn in 6 figures. And even mid-tier creators with a dedicated audience can still pull in a pretty livable wage. And the IP you create this way remains yours, which is going to be important for something that we're going to be talking a little bit later in the video.
Piacirés és támogathatná Rikut, aki szeretne csibe szólna, póló megvétele. Annak, aki a csibe szólna. Én ezt átgondolnom, Róka, de ugye kiindulási alapként eleve a csibe szólna az azért, aki kiváltotta, és ő magának már rányomtathatja egy pólóra. Nyilván, hogyha valami külön artot szeretne, akkor arra bármikor, bármilyen körülmények között commissionelhető vagyok, nem csak feltétlen pólóra, hanem akár csak magára a dizájnra, és akkor print yourself alapon a dizájnból aztán ő magának nyomtatott pólót, bögrét, ami jól esik. Erre mindig is vevő voltam, csak senki nem tartott rá igényt. És ha eddig nem tartott rá senki igényt, hogy a szónájából csináljak valamit specifikusan, ami nem 1/1 az a kép, az alapján, a kép alapjában készítve, amit én egyszer átadtam, akkor nem hiszem, hogy erre külön lenne. Arra, hát mondom, a szónákat tiétek jogilag, arra használjátok fel, amire akarjátok, eladási jogotok is van rá. meg felhasználási jogotok is. Annyi, hogyha felhasználjátok, akkor érdemes feltüntetni engem, hogy rajzolt a kukorikú, bárhol. Ha profilképként, akkor Twitch leírásban mondjuk profilképet rajzolt a kukorikú, vagy angolul esetleg profile picture artist kukorikú, bánom én. Értitek? Viszont igen, ilyen körülmények között azt csináltok vele, amit akartok. Nem tudom, hogy mit értesz a remix alatt, de azt csinálsz vele, amit akarsz. Tehát ezt már 10 000-szer kijelentettem. Csak arra gondoltam, hogy Talin nagyot menne, ha mindenki, aki akar, abban a szónás pólóban lenne, ami az övé. Mindenki kinyomtathatja magának egy pólóra a szónáját, és olcsóbban jön ki, mintha én tőlem lenne megrendelve az adott póló egyrészt, másrészt pedig róka, én print on demand service-szel dolgozom, vagyis ez azt jelenti, hogy én kirakok egy terméket, amit hogyha valamelyikőtök megrendel, akkor az adott cég az legyártja azt az egy darabot, aztán elküldi az illetőnek, vagy ahány darabot rendeltetek, tök mindegy. A lényeg az, hogy nem tudok olyat csinálni, hogy csak egyet csinálok, és azt csak egy embernek adom el, mert nálam helyileg egy póló sincs. Meg egy póló sem megy át rajtam. Egyetlen egy se. Meg én nem tudom, hogy tudok-e berendelni mintadarabokat mondjuk, vagy csak így magamnak egyesével, és aztán nem publikus a dizájn. Tehát olyat nem tudok csinálni, hogy valamiből csak egyet csinálok. Olyankor tényleg érdemesebb azt csinálni, hogy kifizetitek nekem azt, hogy megcsináljam a rajzot egy póló mintához, és azt ti magatoknak olyan anyagú, meg olyan minőségű, meg olyan helyről rendelitek, ahonnan akarjátok. Szia Zoé! Pedig egy Riku képregény érdekesen hangzik, tekintve, hogy írni is szoktál, amire én kíváncsi lennék. Jó, de az más. Más írni, és más képregényt csinálni, mert amikor az ember képregényt rajzol, akkor az sokkal mozisabban kell csinálnia, meg elképzelnie, meg megrendeznie, stb. Akkor konkrétan úgy kell gondolkodni, mint egy rendező, csak mellé még te is készíted a rajzokat. Meg mellé még te is találod ki a történetet, nem. Egy webtoon, egy képregény borzasztóan nehéz. Szörnyen nehéz. Kegyetlenül, főleg, mert tényleg minden jelenetnél ki kell találni a megvilágítást, a karakterek mennyiségét, a szöget, a pószt, a ruházatot, a párbeszédet, a dinamikát, hogy ebből hogy jutnak el A-ból B-be, a karakterívet illetően, és akkor még tartsak is fejben mindenkinek a nevét, vagy a ruhája színét, nagyon melós egy képregényt megcsinálni, és nagyon tisztelem azokat, akiknek megy. Nekem nem menne, én nem tudnék ennyire beleszeretni egy történetbe, hogy ennyit szenvedjek érte, és nagy esélye nem tudnék vele annyi pénzt keresni, hogy megérje. Úgyhogy nem, webtoonba ne reménykedjetek, addig, amíg nem tudok rá felbérelni, mást csináljam meg, addig nem esélyes. És ilyen veszély, hogy én olyan gazdag legyek, szinte még 3 évig nem fog fenyegetni, vagy több.
So if you love sequential art and storytelling,
úgyhogy nem, ez nem egy releváns elképzelés.
And it's definitely something that I wish I'll be able to do at some point in the future. All right, in 10th, we have conventions, art conventions, Comic-Cons, anime expos. Now for those, depending where you live, like if you live in the United States, for example, there's multiple throughout the year, so you could technically be doing this full time. So work on a bunch of art, go sell it at a convention, and then rinse, repeat every month. And I actually know a few people here that make like 6 figures doing that, and that's basically all they do with, you know, other stuff, but they pull in 6 figures just from that. Now, from what I've heard, this is very exhausting. Like my wife does that, but doing that, you're able to kind of build this in-person loyalty almost, you know, that's very hard to replicate online. And this is about as AI proof as it gets, because people at your table are coming to see you as a person. They want the interaction, they want the signed prints, that whole experience. Now in 11th, we have selling courses and educational content. My bread and butter. So if you have any kind of expertise and you're able to communicate it clearly, teaching is probably one of the most high leverage thing you can do as an artist. You just have to create a course once, or like multiple courses, and then they generate income forever. Kind of. Like I took this by working on my art program for 2 years, full time, like 40 plus hours a week. And I'm still updating it to this day. 9 years later, but now with over 31,000 students. It's definitely become the most fulfilling and certainly financially rewarding thing I've ever done. And now so many of my old students are making a living with their own art. It's just the best feeling ever. And I have to say, as the sponsor of this video, we're celebrating the 9th year anniversary this month with well beyond my own experience. Now, I don't believe there's a full curriculum like mine anywhere else, but many artists out there are earning enough to live on just from selling focused courses on things like character design, environment painting, that kind of stuff on platforms like Udemy, Skillshare, Domestika, etc., etc.
Ezen el fogok egyszer töprengeni, hogy külön kurzusokat áruljak, de...
On platforms like qbrush.co again, or other similar ones like Teachable or Proco. Now, this is going to be super AI-proof because people learning online, they want to learn from someone who's been through it and someone who they trust. Now, obviously, you're gonna need to have a solid experience, you know, to back something.
De ehhez szerintem mindig egy kicsit impostor szindrómás legyek, hogy ilyet csináljak, hogy tanítsak.
And it's super fun to teach others and see them improve their own art as a result. Now, in 12th, we have mentoring, which is slightly different. So this will be like one-on-one or like small group mentorships like I've done for many years. And well, you just review student work, you give them feedback, and you try to guide their development, you know, like pretty hands-on directly. For this, the hourly rate is going to be pretty high and you don't need to build a full curriculum to get started. If you just have a couple of years of experience and you can articulate your craft, articulate your methods, your process, well, there's pretty much artists at every level that would gladly pay to have someone that's further ahead than them teach them the ways. And this also pairs really well with like streaming or content creation because your audience already knows your work and hopefully they trust your eye. All right, now this is where the ceiling gets really high on average. So these paths will usually require like years of skill building and a professional network to some degree, but the financial rewards can be exceptional. So in 13, we have studio jobs. So working at a game studio, animation studio, film studio, either as a like a concept artist or like a character artist, environment
de
artist,
egyébként
3D
hétbe-hóba így
artist,
is úgy is jól járok azzal, hogy ilyen
I spent a little
videókat
over 10
nézek
years
már
doing that,
legalább.
and the last 7 of those were spent at Blizzard Entertainment, where I worked on games like Overwatch, StarCraft, Heroes of the Storm, and the pay was excellent, like towards the higher end of the range that you're seeing on screen here. Although Blizzard's been kind of crashing out in recent years, so I'll probably go somewhere else now. But yeah, the stability, the benefits, and of course the experience of working with like some of the
Legalább, hogyha véletlenül valamit elfelejtenék erről a listáról, akkor ilyenkor emlékeztet rá.
Now the downside is that the industry has gone through some pretty brutal mass layoffs recently. But I wouldn't necessarily blame that on AI. I would say it's more the symptoms of a post-COVID like hiring frenzy that really couldn't be sustained in a terrible economy that we're in. For the time being though, it does mean that you would have to like take your craft to the next level because competition is definitely a lot fiercer. Way more than what I got in the industry.
Ami a türelmet illeti, hóhérka, szerintem inkább csak simán a kitartás, mert van különbség ugye online kurzusok és mentorálás között, ahogyan Márk is az előbb felvázolta. Az online kurzusokat egyszer megcsinálom, felveszem videóra, csinálok hozzá képanyagot, szöveganyagot, mint magyarázat, és utána azt az emberek, mint egy könyv, mint egy digitális könyv tudják kvázi megvenni, letölteni, tanulni belőle. Csak annyi a különbség, hogy abban lehetnek videók, gifek, úgy, mint egy könyvben nem például. Viszont, hogyha meg mentorálásról van szó, akkor tényleg fogom az illetőnek a kezét, és megkérdezi, hogy mit szúrtam mellé, én pedig elmondom, hogy hogyan csinálhatná jobban, stb. Stb. Ahhoz türelem kell, ahhoz rengeteg. Meg ott mégiscsak más. Szia, Réna! Ott mégiscsak más, mert én túlságos és úgy tekintek egyébként a kritikára, hogy egyrészt nem kéne kritizálni mások munkáját a kapásból, így ez az első helyes hozzáállás, a második helyes hozzáállás pedig az, hogy a saját célja felé terelni az illetőt, megkérdezni, hogy oké, ha ez nem tetszik, mi a cél, ami tetszene, és akkor utána a menetirányba igazítani már sokkal egyszerűbb, de meg azt mondani, hogy hát ez nem jó, így mert csúnya, az úgy nem egy fair hozzáállás, vagy hogy nem jól csinálod, mert én így csinálnám, az se jó. Mert az illető addig nem lesz elégedett a munkájával, amíg nem azt kapja, amit valójában elvár magától. De hogy valójában mit vár el magától, az csak akkor tudhatja, hogyha meg tudja nekem mutatni azoknak az embereknek a rajzait, akikéhez hasonlítani szeretne. Vagy akiket felül akar múlni. Onnantól van már nekem egy támpontom. És akkor tudom ténylegesen őt abba az irányba terelni, ami őt érdekli, mert én hiába mondom el, hogy anatómiailag hogyan lehet korrekt az az orr, hogyha neki nem anatómiailag korrekt orr kell, mert egy manga artistot szeretne utolérni. Például.
Industry for sure. Now these things are always temporary. You just don't know like how many years before it stabilizes. But yeah, and by the way, like for those curious, I got my first job as a game developer from social media, or aka DeviantArt back in the days. Like an art director from a local studio just happened to see my stuff online and sent me an offer. And then I worked there for a couple of years, kept posting online, and then the same thing happened again, but with Blizzard this time. So a recruiter spotted my stuff, sent me an offer, and I moved on to Blizzard. Now everybody's story is going to be different, but that's mine. So that's why, you know, I always really stress on having an online presence because it's given me my entire career. And recruiters everywhere, they're always on social media trying to find, you know, people to hire. Now in 14, and this is starting to get like pretty high level, but you have freelancing for studios and brands. Studios will often hire freelancers like contractors to work or to help fill up like a team when they're crunching at the end of a project or something like that, or if they need help for any reason, rather than hiring somebody full-time. And like big brands, well, they need illustrators for promotional work, packaging, ad campaign, like social media content, whatever. And I'm just grouping these two together because the hustle, you know, is kind of similar. But there's a bit of a distinction to make here because big brands usually have much bigger budgets than studios do. And AI here has much less of an impact because usually it's not just about the art, it's also about who you're hiring. And anyways, you need to collaborate with like a team of creatives and follow art direction, go through multiple revisions. It's a whole like team process. And very often what the brands are after is not just your art, like I was saying, but also your clout. You know, they might want the exposure that you have as a popular artist, and that comes as a premium. Now for the last two, in 15, we have licensing and IP ownership. So this is gonna be like the really long game, but arguably also the most financially rewarding out of the bunch. So like if you create original characters or like worlds and you retain the intellectual property, well, you can license that to use on products, in media, maybe in video games. Like some artists have built entire businesses around their own characters or like the world that they created. Like another example might be like all the webtoons that have been turned into anime. Like my own IP, Chroma Island, is not there at all, but you know, in the distant future, that's kind of the goal. One day. And now in 16, the last one, speaking at events or workshops. So once you've built a strong enough reputation, and this is really like a late game, events or like companies will pay you to come and talk in person at their events, at their company, to their employees. Now this obviously requires you to be well known in the industry, so you know, this is something that you'll have built over years and years.
Na
and
igen.
if you didn't know, it's
Ehhez még
something
szerintem
that you
kicsi
can make
vagyok,
good
hogy én
amount of money.
előadásokat tartsak, de oké.
Now, to wrap this all up, I think one thing is important to mention is that the artists who earn the most usually won't rely on just one of any of the methods we've seen, right? It'll always be like a stack of methods. Like maybe you have a studio job as your base and you sell digital assets on the side, or you have a YouTube channel that funnels more hardcore fans to your Patreon. Some of these jobs on their own might not be necessarily sufficient, but when you add a bunch of different ones together, that can really add up to financial stability. And the beauty is that if one gets sort of disrupted, well, you always have the other or the others to fall back on. So diversify your income the same way you diversify your
Egyébként
skills.
passzív
And on that
bevételt
topic,
most már
if you
illene
want to start
ténylegesen
building
építenem
skills that will
ilyen
open all
digitális
these doors.
termékekből, úgyhogy most ez lesz a következő harci helyzete Rikunak, valahogy meg kell menteni a vállalkozásomat. Nagy eséllyel ez úgy fog megtörténni, hogy megpróbálok mindent, hogy legyen passzív bevételem Etsy-s eladásokból, mondjuk matricatervek, de inkább VTuber kiegészítők mondjuk, vagy mit tudom én, egy avatar, amit többször meg lehet vásárolni, egy ilyen egyszerűbb darab. Viszont, ja, ez is rengeteg munka, és utána nem biztos, hogy meg fog térülni. Úgyhogy utána meg mehet a reklámozási hadművelet. Úgyhogy lesz itt sok minden. Ja, meg még van egy passion projectem, amiről még mindig nem meséltem nektek, csak annyit, hogy titok. Kívánjatok el sok sikert, gyerekek. Riku most munkát munkára fog halmozni. Stresszre nem feltétlen, mert amióta egy kicsit sikerült lejjebb adnom a koffein szintemet, most harmadik napja nem iszok koffeint, azóta egy kicsit könnyebben, nem azt mondom, hogy könnyebben átlátom a dolgaimat és kevesebb stresszelek rajtuk, hanem csak simán próbálom megoldani őket, és nem rájuk stresszelni, és eddig tök jól megy. Csak nagyon könnyen besokallok, tehát hogy nem stresszelek, és simán bejut ez az állapot, hogy oké, most nagyon hirtelen nagyon nem akarok foglalkozni ezek közül a problémák közül egyikkel se, és most mindenki adjon engem békén 30 percig. De hogyha túl vagyok azon a 30 percen, akkor utána általában jók vagyok. Na de, kövi videó. Lehet, hogy nem fogjuk végignézni.
Yeah, I was wrong on those things. So here are the 5 big things I got wrong about communication. And this is what I now
Brother egyébként olyan kurzusokat tart, amik megtanítanak téged jobban kommunikálni az emberek előtt. Ezért szoktam nézni, mert azért mégiscsak fő része a tartalomgyártásnak az, hogy kötődj az emberekhez és beszélgess velük. Meg előad magad. Ja igen, a fake it till you make it. Ezt átpörgetem, mert ezt a szegmens már láttam, de a lényeg az, hogy eddig az volt a fő hozzáállása a brónak, hogy tegyél úgy, mintha egy magabiztos ember lennél, addig, amíg magabiztos ember nem leszel. Ez volt eddig a hozzáállás, ez volt a tapasztalat, amit továbbadott az embereknek, és aztán belegondolt, hogy várjunk. Ahhoz, hogy ez ne menjen át abba, hogy tettetitek, hogy kik vagytok, újra kell ezt megint húzalozni, és úgy kell hozzáállni, hogy te nem egy magabiztos embert játszol addig, amíg magabiztosan nem válsz, hanem teszteled a saját határaidat, és hogy mi válhat még be neked, és egyszerűen ezeket az új dolgokat az életedbe behozod, kipróbálod, és ha nem működik, akkor meg nem csinálod. És amíg az ember viszont így fogja fel, hogy most valami újat tesztel, azzal, hogy mondjuk hangosabban beszél, többet beszél, máshogy beszél, akkor sokkal kevésbé fog úgy érződni, hogy ő most megjátszaná magát.
Okay, now to false belief number 2. Communication is a performance. For a long time, I believed that masterful communication was just a performance. And that belief came from a very specific part of my life. Here's where it started. I used to be a professional magician in my early 20s, and during that time, I lived by this powerful quote by a magician named John Eugene Robert Houdin. And he said, "A magician is just an actor playing the part of a magician." When I read that quote, I understood that if I wanted to become a better magician, I needed to learn how to perform and act. So I went and started theatre classes. I studied performance, vocal pace, gestures, stage presence, how to command a room. I eventually became a better performer, but here's where I went wrong.
Jó beszélgetést a szaktársaidal.
I took those lessons from the world of theatre and I applied it to real-world communication. I started to perform in every single conversation, every single presentation. On the surface, I was doing everything right. The skills were there, the technique was there, but the intent was completely wrong. I wasn't communicating to connect with people. I was communicating to impress them. And again, I learned this from the world of theatre, because in the world of theatre, you're performing to impress often and most of the time. And that's what happens when you get stuck in that performance mode. Your focus is on how you come across, not how to connect with the person in front of you. So let me give you something practical you can take away from this. The next time you walk into a conversation, whether it's in a meeting, a presentation, or a first date, in front of you. So let me
hogy valójában nem az előadás a cél, hanem az, hogy köteléket hozzunk létre magunk és a többi ember között.
So let me give you something practical you can take away from this. The next time you walk into a conversation, whether it's in a meeting, a presentation, or a first date, whatever the situation, pay attention to the questions running in the back of your mind. Because in performance mode, the questions you're asking yourself constantly are, how am I coming across right now? Am I sounding smart enough? Am I saying the right thing? Do they think I'm credible? Are they impressed with me? You see the problem with these questions? They're all about you. It's just me. But when you switch to connection mode, the questions that you're thinking in the back of your head, they should change. What are they actually feeling? What are they not saying in our conversation right now? What would make them feel like I actually see them? See the difference with these questions? They put the focus on the other person. And let me be really clear with you two. The first time I made this conscious switch, it felt a little bit uncomfortable because when you stop performing, you have to get rid of the scripts that you've been repeating for the longest time. You don't know what you want to say next now because you're actually listening to the person and waiting for your turn to speak. And trust me, the person that's sitting in front of you, they can feel the difference between you trying to be impressive and you trying to sit there and understand them. They might not immediately be able to label it, but trust me, again, they can feel it. Now to number 3. This one I'm actually a little bit embarrassed about, to be honest, because I spent years teaching people how to speak better and almost no time teaching them how to listen better. Yeah. Back in 2016, I ran my first communication skills class in America. It was actually in a theater in Long Beach, Southern California. We had a theater with 200 seats and about 35 people showed up. And I ran a 3-day workshop on voice training, body language, storytelling, presence, all of it. And near the end of day 3,
ez nem ugyanaz a palióhérka, akinek az előbb nem volt haja.
There's only 1 hour left. When are we going to learn about
nem, it's not the same person. Eddig más bőnetet néztük, most meg vingi hangot.
This is a class on public speaking, not public listening. And I thought people were going to laugh. The very next day, Mary sent me an email and she was giving me very strong feedback and she told me that I'd missed the larger half of communication in my entire workshop. And you know what? Yep, she was right. I'd spent my whole early 20s learning how to be heard and I obsessed about it to the point where I didn't realize I was missing the other 50% of communication. I never made others feel heard. I never had active listening in my repertoire. Let me show you an example of what Vin was like before he learned how to listen. And then I'm going to show you another example of Vin after he learned how to listen. Have a look at this before and after.
Vin, I just started doing archery and man, it's so difficult.
Oh my God, I love archery. It's so easy.
I just started doing archery and man, it's so difficult. But the thing I love most about it is how present it makes me feel.
Oh, Peter, that sounds so beautiful, man. I'm so glad that you found a hobby that helps you relax and unwind.
Yeah, man, my work is so stressful, working with a boss who's just like a massive tyrant. But ever since I started doing archery, my quality of life has improved massively. Man, I love talking to you.
It's all good, Peter. It's my pleasure, man. Get back to work.
I think Peter forgets that I'm actually his boss sometimes. Before I learned how to listen, every relationship in my life was pretty surface level. And I used to wonder, why? Why don't I have more depth in my life? Why does every conversation feel like small talk? And I freaking hated small talk. Why does everybody not want to go deeper with me? I see them go deeper with other people. And then I started to realize that, well, people did want to go deeper with me. They were leaving clues in every single conversation, little openings, little moments where they were inviting me into their lives. But I missed all of them every single damn time because I wasn't listening. I was just waiting for my bloody turn to talk. I need to hammer this point home. I'm going to show you another skit, another example, because it's critical that you get exactly what I mean here.
Yo, Pete, how was your night last night?
Yeah, it was okay, I guess.
Oh, that's good. I'm glad to hear that. Okay, well, works that way. Work harder. Attaboy.
Did you notice that? Peter's voice gave away that he was feeling a little down. And the pause before he said he was okay, the word choice saying, okay, I guess. These are all clues that if I picked up on it, it could have led to this instead.
Yo, Pete, how was your night last night?
Yeah, it's been okay, I guess.
Doesn't sound okay, man. You want to talk about it?
Man, my work's just been piling up, been working extra hours, and I've just been having to take my work home. It's just been so overwhelming.
Oh, Pete, you silly bugger. All we gotta do is take half of your workload over here, take it from this desk, move it over here, and give it to old mate Andy. He's happy with this, aren't you, Andy? You see, we're all happy now. All of us, a big old happy family, all ready to work together.
There are opportunities for depth in every single conversations that exist all around you, all around me, all around all of us. Most of us just don't listen. We miss the vocal cues. We miss the visual cues. As you start to listen more, you'll start to deepen the connection you feel with others and others feel with you. What I now believe is that listening is just as important as speaking, if not more important. So Mary, thanks for this lesson. You've actually made me a better person. False belief number 4.
Sokkal
The
fontosabb
introvert
meghallgatni
and
mást, mint
extrovert myth.
ténylegesen
I used to
beszélni.
believe that if you're an introvert, it's fine. The introvert
Igen, így
and
járt
extrovert
pontosan
myth.
Csóri paradicsom.
I used to
Intro
believe
vagy
that if you're an
az
introvert,
introvertált
it's
vagy
fine for you to stay
extrovertált
small,
jelző
it's
az
fine for you to speak
meghatároz
quietly.
téged.
That's just who you are. Don't worry about it. And I wouldn't push my introverted students as hard. And for as long as I used to believe this, I was only serving half of my class. I remember this conversation I had with my vocal teacher, Miss Stanley. She said, Vin, I want you to imagine 2 world-class pianists. One is an introvert and the other one is an extrovert. Does this change how they play their instrument? Between the extrovert and the introvert, does it change how they play it? And what I learned from Miss Stanley was that the instrument does not care about your personality type. And with just this one lesson, Miss Stanley rewired the way I think about this entire situation. Because your voice and your body language, your ability to connect with another human being, that's your instrument. Just like the piano, it doesn't care whether you're an introvert or an extrovert. It only cares whether you're good with the instrument. I've worked with thousands of students over the last 15 years, and some of the most magnetic communicators I've ever seen are deeply introverted. They're not loud, they're not the center of attention all the time, but when they need to be, when they speak, people lean in because they've done the work. They've learned how to use their instrument. They can switch it on and they can switch it off. So to the introverts watching this video, stop using that as a label and as a reason for you not to try and for you not to learn how to use your voice and your body language. You're not disqualified from being a great communicator.
Akkor is
You just haven't
lehettek
given
jók
yourself permission to practice
kommunikációban,
because
hogyha
you've been using
introvertáltak
this
vagytok.
as an
Bám!
excuse. And to the extroverts, don't assume that you're sorted.
Igaz, élő
Being comfortable
példa,
talking
gyerekek.
is not the same
Így
thing as
sírke nem
being
vagy.
bloody good at it.
Jaj.
And here's where this goes even deeper.
Néha
down
az
the
adja arra,
rabbit
hogy a saját
hole. Take a deep
szlogenem.
breath. We're about to go down and see how deep this rabbit hole actually goes. For a long time, I thought the way that I communicated just was who I was. This is just my voice. This is just how I sound. This is just me. I actually never questioned it until I sat with this idea. The way you communicate right now, it's not something you were born with. It's something that you absorbed from your parents, your siblings, your friends, your teachers, the other kids at school. Every single person you were around during your formative years left a mark on the way you speak and the way you listen and the way you carry yourself. What you have right now is a collection of habits that you've picked up without even realizing it. And here's why this is important. If it's a habit, it can be
changed.
The
Ha
version of
valami
you that
csak egy
shows up in
szokás,
the
akkor meg
conversation
lehet
right now, that's
változtatni.
just one
Ugyanúgy,
version
ahogy
of you. It's
azt
not
is
the
megszoktuk,
final
hogy hogyan
version of you.
beszélünk,
But
mert
for as long as you
átvettük
keep
másoktól.
telling yourself, this is how I am, this is how I'm forever going to be, you're never going to evolve into the future version of you. So here's what I want you to take away from this. Your personality type is not your ceiling. It's just your starting point. An introvert who puts in the work will outperform an extrovert who doesn't every single time. And the way you communicate today
Ami
is
szörnyen
not
szomorú, hogy
permanent.
nekem például
It's
rutinos
just the
a
It's
halogatás.
just a series of habits, and habits you can change. You've already proven to yourself that you can change the way you communicate. You speak differently when you're with your best mate as compared to
He's talking fast. That's his job, Milo. Ez a munkája. Természetesen, gyerekek, mindig legyen az a, hogy mondjam, a háttérzaj a fejetekben, amikor ilyen videót hallgattok, hogy ez az ember eladná nektek a hámozott lufit is. Mint az összes többi influencer. Az, hogy mit vesztek át tőle tudás, és hogyan implementáljátok a saját életetekbe, az már a ti felelősségetek, és onnantól már minden rendben van. Csak azt mondom, hogyha meggyőzött titeket arról, hogy nála van az aranyalma ahhoz, hogy tökéletesen tudjatok kommunikálni, a ló túloldalán nem biztos, hogy át kell esni, hogy egyből meg is veszitek a kurzusát, stb. Ő neki egyértelműen ezekkel a videókkal az a célja, hogy még több videót fogyasszatok tőle, és vagy vásároljatok tőle. Úgyhogy ja, ilyenkor mindig legyetek hámozott lufival. Mindenhol az van, róka, az konkrétan a levegő a hámozott lufi. Szóval... Azért gondoljatok bele néha abba is, hogy Dudnak az a dolga, hogy minden, amit mond, az fact legyen. Viszont ott van természetesen a másik oldala is a dolognak, hogy ténylegesen ezeket érdemes meghallgatni, mert nagyon sokszor nem arról van szó, hogy valami velünk vagy bennünk hibás, nagyon-nagyon-nagyon sok esetben nem hiba van velünk, vagy hiba van bennünk, hanem csak simán rossz a hozzáállásunk az adott dologhoz, és rosszul közelítjük meg. Minél több perspektívában halljátok a saját problémátokat, minél több irányból megközelítve, annál könnyebben tudjátok megoldani ti magatoknak.
When you speak with your boss. You speak differently when you're with your kids as opposed to when you're speaking to a stranger. You already have range. You just haven't made it conscious.
Én már akarok egy hámozott lóvétér is. Nekem meg kéne egy laminált szemmérték. Oké, gyerekek.
Just yet. So stop asking, am I an introvert or am I an extrovert? And allow that to dictate how you communicate. And start asking these questions instead. Have I actually practiced with my instrument? Have I truly started to explore what this instrument is capable of? Am I still letting who I was back in the past decide who I get to become in the future? Because those are the only questions that matter. Not am I an introvert or am I an extrovert? Point number 5, communication is a science. For a long time, I treated communication like it was a science.
Tudomány.
Oxygen plus hydrogen makes water. Every single time, no exceptions. Fixed inputs, fixed outputs. It's science, man. That's how I thought about communication skills. Louder voice, bigger gestures, strong eye contact equals influence every single time. And then I tried it in the real world, and this is really weird, but it worked in some rooms, and in others, it made me come across as intimidating, over the top and a little bit too much. It was the same inputs, but I had different outputs. I remember thinking to myself, what the frick? This is weird. I had the same experience with humor. I'd tell a story that was light, warm, funny, and in one room, it hits perfectly. And then in another room, the exact same story, the exact same delivery, it offended somebody. Same words, completely different impact. That's when I realized that communication isn't a science, it's an art form. Science will give you fixed rules. Art gives you principles. Art requires you to read the context, feel the room, and then adjust in real time. You can't just run the formula. You have to develop judgment. And this one belief changed the way that I teach. Because once I stopped treating communication like a science, I stopped obsessing over the perfect formula. And I started paying attention to something that's much more important. Emotional intelligence. And in about 82 seconds, I'm going to give you a practical way to learn and apply EQ, emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is not just a formula. You can't just memorize the right amount of eye contact, pair it with the right number of gestures and the right vocal tone and expect that combination to work in the same way in every single room with every single person in every single situation. Life doesn't work like that. And human beings definitely don't work like that. What works beautifully for one person can feel way too intense for another. What feels playful and warm to one can come across as disrespectful to a different person in a different room. What feels supportive to another person can feel patronizing to someone else, even though you've said the exact same things with the words, with the exact same delivery. And that's exactly why communication is an art form, because art requires that sensitivity. And an artist doesn't just slap on paint all over a canvas and hopes for the best. They're constantly paying attention, constantly adjusting, constantly responding to what's in front of them. And that's what emotional intelligent communication looks like in practice. It's the ability to read what's happening in real time and then adjust how you show up based on what the moment needs from you. It's knowing when to bring the energy, when to bring the softness. It's knowing when to bring a joke that's going to help break the tension versus when the same joke is going to make things worse. It's knowing when to speak up and when the most powerful thing you can do is just hold space and listen. Okay, so here's a practical tip. If you want to get better at emotional intelligence, stop walking into conversations trying to be the most impressive person in the room, referring back to the rule before, and start walking into the room with a different question. What's this particular moment? What's this moment asking of me? Not what worked in the last room that I was in, or what's the best line for me to use here, but really think about what does this specific person in front of me, what do they need right now? Do they need encouragement? Do they need certainty? Do they need me to slow down? Do they need me to listen more? Or do they need me to share some advice? Because emotional intelligence is really just the ability to notice what's happening in the room in front of you. What has changed in this moment? How do I change with it? That is real-time feedback. Then the more you tune into it, the better your judgment becomes over time. So yes, learn the skills, learn the frameworks, learn all of the mechanics. Everything you're learning matters, but never forget the mechanics, that's not the art form. The art is in how well you can feel what the moment requires from you and respond to it in real time. That is communication, and that is emotional intelligence paired with masterful communication. Those are the 5 things I got wrong early in my communication skills journey.
Oké, amivel megszivattam most saját magamat és titeket is, hogy egyébként nem sokára nem sokára menni kell, mert a pizza tésztának csak 1 órára volt szüksége a keléshez, az meg lejárt. De még van egy 18 perces videóm, és még el kell mennem mosdószünetre, úgyhogy ezt egy kicsit rosszul szerveztem össze, de lenyomjuk. Mondjuk ebből a videóból nem tudom, hogy mit fogok én hazavinni, mert ebben nem kukucskáltam bele. Az első 2-be igen. Ebből nem tudom, hogy a nőt milyen gyorsan fogom megunni, viszont egyelőre kénytelen vagyok sajnos itt hagyni titeket egy kicsit, amíg elszadok mosdóra, addig itt hagyok nektek egy lurkbaitet, hogy ha szeretnétek horgászni, akkor megtehessétek. Tudjátok, a szokásos felkértél fish a parancs, és aki a legtöbbet horgászott, aki a legtöbb pontot szerzi hó végéig, az dönteti el, hogy mi legyen a következő dolog, amit bedobunk a tóba. Egyelőre még az előző havi jutalmat se sikerült megrajzolnom és bedobni a tóba, de meg fogom oldani. Remélhetőleg még ezen a héten. Mindent ezen a héten kell megoldanom. Na, nem sokára jövök, addig jók legyetek! Visszajöttem, de látom, jól elvájboltok. Akkor még ezt a számot végighallgatjuk, és utána folytatjuk csak a videónézést. Utolsó dobások, gyerekek. Tényleg olyan, mintha azt énekelni, hogy Todoroki fell asleep. Most nem fogom tudni máshogy hallani. Szégyed magad, Arzén. Hello, réderek! Úristen, kaptunk rédereket Rénától. Ó, értem. Hello, réderek! Ilyen rég el voltam. Nagyon sajnálom. Tiatú! Name's Riku, nice to meet you. Riku vagyok, nagyon rendelkés. Bocsi, még egyszerű nem tudta titeket időben köszönteni, sajnos el kellett szaladnom mosdószünetre. Na viszont zenehallgatás egyelőre ennyi volt, aztán majd még visszajön, végignézzük ezt a videót, utána megyek pizzát sütni, kivételesen most nem visztek magammal titeket pizzát sütni, hanem addig megy majd a szokásos passzív stream, amint továbbra is horgászhatok, meghallgatok zenét. De az egyből 2 órás művelet lesz, amíg nem leszek itt. Utána pedig rajzstream lesz, megpróbálom megtervezni az első póló mintáinkat, és setupolni az első fizikai merch shopunkat. Ez mind szerintem nem fog sikerülni ma, de beladunk apai anyait, hogy ez mégiscsak megoldható legyen.
The single greatest skill that separates broke people from wealthy people is not intelligence or luck, okay? It is mastering the psychology of money. I went from being 100 pounds overweight, broke, arrested 6 times, to building companies worth hundreds of billions of dollars. And it is not because I'm special, I am no different from you. It is because I stopped letting my broke mindset...
Na ő például a hámozott lufit is eladja neked. Meg botoxolt a szája, úgyhogy na például neki ne higgyünk el minden szót csak úgy. Előbb nézzük végig, hogy mit akar mondani.
Run my actual life. So if you want to build real wealth, you need to break free from these 6 limiting beliefs that are keeping you broke. The first limiting belief or system of beliefs...
Ő arról fog nekünk beszélni, hogy hogyan legyen olyan gondolkodásmódunk, amivel bevonzuk a pénzt. Nem ennyire humbug módon magyarázta ő, viszont kb. Ennyi volt benne az értelem.
Poor is what I call the money script. Every financial decision that you make, what job you take, how much you charge, how guilty you feel spending a certain amount of money is all controlled by this subconscious script that you probably didn't even write yourself. And this is actual science. There's research by financial psychologists that talk about the 4 types of money scripts that predict. És
nem mindegy, hogy milyen módon gondolkodunk úgy általában a pénz körül, és elvileg van 4.
Financial behavior.
4 fajta kód, ami a financial behavior, ami a financiális viselkedésünket körülírja.
And these scripts are actually formed in childhood before you're even conscious enough.
És ez már gyerekkorban elvileg kialakult, mielőtt egyáltalán elkezdtél volna gondolkodni pénzen.
Understand what money is. As I go through each of these,
Hogy mi az.
I want you to think about which one you unconsciously follow yourself. I will tell you.
És jó lenne, hogyha a videó kommentjeibe leírnád azt, hogy te vajon melyik kategóriába esel.
Or at least how I grew up. Okay, the first one is a money avoider. These people
Az első az a pénzkerülő.
and that they don't deserve it.
Úgy gondolják, hogy a pénz rossz, és nem érdemlik meg.
They often work in helping professions that have very low pay. And they feel guilty about wanting to have money. So if you grew up,
és bűntudatok van azért, hogy több pénzt szeretnének. Vagy hogy pénzt szeretnének a munkájukért, felnőttként.
Rich people are greedy. Money is the root of all evil.
Mivel olyan gondolkodásuk van, hogy a gazdag emberek azok önzőek, és a pénz minden rossznak a gyökere.
that's probably the script that you have in your head. Now, on the other hand, we also have money worshippers.
Aztán vannak azok, akik istenítik a pénzt.
So if you're a money worshiper, you believe that money will solve all your problems
És
and bring
hogyha te ebbe a kategóriába esel, akkor azt fogod hinni, hogy a pénz az minden problémádat megoldja.
happiness. Okay?
És
So a money
tudsz rajta
worshiper,
venni
they
boldogságot.
chase money obsessively, but they never feel like they have enough. They
Állandóan próbálnak pénzt keresni, de sose érzik úgy, hogy lenne elég pénzük.
feel like they have enough. They
Igen.
hoard, they prioritize work over relationships, always
Inkább a munkát választják a helyet, hogy a szeretteikkel töltsenek együtt időt.
believing that a certain amount of more money is going to bring them happiness.
És
I
úgy érzik, hogy ha csak ennyivel több pénzem lenne, boldogabb lennék, de valahogy sose sikerül ez nekik elérni.
just haven't made enough yet. I need to make $1 million. Now it's 10 million. Now it's
És mindig amikor átlép egy milliós értékegységet, utána még több kell, mert valahogy boldogabb nem lesz, hiába van több
100
pénze.
million in order to be happy. Now, there's the money status script. People
Van a pénz egyenlő státusz
who
hozzáállás.
suffer from the money status script tie their self-worth to their net worth.
És ezek az emberek összekötik a saját értéküket, a saját vagyonukkal.
They overspend because they want to keep up appearances, hide their
Túlköltekeznek, mert szeretnék külsőleg fenntartani magukat.
finances, even from like spouses, if it's not what they think it should be, and they feel anxious when other people are wealthier than them. So it's like the
És szorongást éreznek, hogyha mások gazdagabbnak néznek ki, mint ők.
typical keeping up with the Joneses. Like you're looking in the yard of your neighbor and you're like, dude, I need to have a better yard than him. Research shows that this script is actually linked to lower well-being and increased unhappiness. Now,
Kevésbé érzik jól magukat a bőrükben,
why is that? Because you're constantly comparing yourself.
mert állandóan összehasonlítják magukat
The
másokkal.
last one is money vigilant people.
És az utolsó az money vigilant, de ezt a szót nem tudom lefordítani nektek, várjatok. Mi összeszemet jelent ez a szó? Pénzre vigyázó, pénzfele törködő.
Okay, these are people who are chronic savers who live
Ezek
below
azok, akik állandóan spórolnak,
their means, but they experience
alacsonyabb életszínvonalon élnek, mint amin élhetnének,
constant
de állandóan
anxiety about
szoronganak attól, hogy milyen lesz a pénzügyi jövőjük.
financial future. They're usually secretive about money. They never feel secure, even when they have plenty. So I want you to think
Általában nem nagyon beszélnek a pénzről, és mindig bátortalanok ezzel kapcsolatban, akkor is, hogyha rengeteg van nekik.
about of those four, you might be a mix of a couple of them, but think about the one that you
Amúgy
identify
van egy ismerősöm, aki ijesztően ebbe a spektrumba, és ha hinnék abban, amit ez a nő mond, de egyelőre még nem győzött meg arról, hogy egyelőre egy szava is igaz lenne.
with the most. Think about how it affected you growing up. So when I went through these, I was like, I definitely identify the most with money vigilant, which probably sounds weird because you're looking at me and you're like, I see jewelry and I see makeup and hair and all this. I'm gonna be really honest with you guys. I spend nothing compared to how much money I have, to the degree that when I had $100 million net worth, I didn't even want to spend over a couple $1 million on the house. In fact, I rented for
Egyik sem. Az a helyzet, hogy mindegyik egy extrémet ír körül, de nyilván nem kell, hogy mindegyikbe extrém módon belepasszoljon az ember. Ezek ilyen kiindulási pontokként akarnak szolgálni, de szerintem nincs one size fit for all megoldás, vagyis hát egy méret mindenkinek jó megoldás ezekre a problémákra, de nézzük meg, hogy hova akar a Csajci kiukadni.
for 3 years at that point in my life and didn't even own a home. And that is because it's the constant anxiety of like never feeling secure, even when you have plenty. So Alex actually knows this about me, which
De
is a
szerintem
terrible
a
habit,
négy
but
egyszerre is jelen tud lenni, nem zárják ki egymást.
when I feel like I'm not making as much money or less profit for a couple months, even though it affects nothing about my personal life because I don't even take money from my business, I just start to spend less money. I don't look at things. I don't buy stuff. I tell people, I'm like, don't buy that. What are we doing? I tell my whole assistant team, I'm like, we don't need that. No, let's cut here. Let's go through our finances and cut stuff that we don't need. I realized it was a pattern that I had in my past that I was bringing into my current day life that wasn't serving me. And so something I tried to start doing the last few times that's happened where I've just felt that urge to spend less money, I go spend more money. It's probably a worse behavior, but it's telling my brain like, listen, you're gonna listen to me. This is irrational. I'm not going to listen to you. And so I will spend money even when I have that impulse not to teach myself it's okay because the evidence shows it is, and whatever's happening in my brain has nothing to do with what's happening on the outside. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to think about the phrases that you heard growing up. Maybe it's, you know, one, money doesn't grow on trees, be grateful for what you have, rich people are greedy. Okay, those things are not lessons. They're other people's thoughts that you took on. And so once they get written into your subconscious, then they start dictating everything about your life. What jobs you take, how much money you charge, what you believe you deserve, how much money you spend, when you should be anxious versus excited about spending money. So here's how we want to rewire our brains to think about money differently. Write down your earliest memory about money. What did your parents say about it? How did they behave with it? That's probably your money script. And once you see it, you can rewrite it. And so your new script, for example, could be money is a tool that...
Eddig a csajszébogának az a tippje, hogy írjátok le azt, hogy a szüleiteknek mi volt a hozzáállás a pénzhez, amikor először pénzt adtak nektek, és hogy ekkor tudtok igazán szembesülni az, hogy mi lehet a ti pénzzel kapcsolatos berögződésétek, és utána tudjátok átírni.
Lets me create freedom and help more people.
És innentől lehet ez az új script a fejetekben, hogy a pénz az egy eszköz arra, hogy szabadságot teremts, és több emberen segíts.
Once you change that internal script, your external results will start to update. It takes a lot of the emotion out of it, and once you associate positive feelings with that new narrative, you start to actually see that your behaviors align with it more. The next limiting belief keeping you poor is what we call a wealth ceiling. Here's the truth about it.
És van még egy hátráltató tényező, amit úgy hívnak, hogy vagyonbeli plafon.
A $200,000 opportunity if you still see yourself as somebody who only pursues a $50,000 opportunity. Now, why is that? The amount of money that you have is capped by how you see yourself. Just like the partner that you have, just like the job that you have, just like the house that you live in. The research on this is very clear. Your self-concept acts as a thermostat. If you see yourself as somebody who earns $100,000, you'll unconsciously strive to maintain that level, right? And you will not pursue a level above it. That's a really important piece. Now, if you make $150,000, you'll probably spend an additional $50,000. If you make $80,000, you'll stress and work until you're back at the $100,000. See what I'm saying? So for me, for years, I'm scrappy, I'm surviving, I'm getting by. And I remember because I got stuck when I was in my first job, making around $85,000 a year. It was like I created this identity around it. I knew logically.
Pillanatra megértem, hogy mit keres egy tojás a videóban.
I remember the moment I started making more, I started to compete, and then all my money started going to its competition fees. The second piece is that I remember so many times when I knew I was about to start making more, it's like I would almost sabotage myself by getting wound up in it. I was like, oh my God, what if I f up? What if I mess up? What if I don't actually make more? And I didn't realize at the time that that was like me regulating my internal temperature. And so if your identity is, I'm somebody who struggles with money, you find ways to keep struggling. But if it's, I'm someone who creates and manages my wealth and can make more money if I choose to, then you're going to find a way to live that out. So, here's...
Vannak hitek is, amikkel a saját utunkba tudunk állni, az, hogy több pénzt keresünk, mint például, hogy nem vagyunk érdemesek rá, nem fog menni, el fogjuk szúrni meg társai, de hogyha ezt abba hagyjuk, akkor több lehetőség lesz arra, hogy változtassuk ezen.
Okay, I want you to write this down. I'm the kind of person who... And then finish the sentence honestly. Whatever your current financial...
Én vagyok az a fajta ember, aki, vagy személy, aki, és őszintén fejezzük be a mondatot, ez a házi feladat.
I overspend, I underspend, I save too much, I save nothing. Then I want you to put a line down that piece of paper on the other side, right? I'm the kind of person who builds and manages wealth with ease. You don't need to feel like that person yet. You don't need to act like them just yet.
És megint le kell cserélni a gondolkodásunkat.
Not be repulsed by what you see on the piece of paper. I'm serious. Every time you now make a decision, for money, I want you to pull out that piece of paper. That's all
Ne
I want.
esküszöm, srácok, hogyha ez a videó véletlenül beválik, akkor utólag szólok nektek róla, hogy amúgy képzeljétek, ez a videó actually hasznos volt, és miatta nem kell feladnom a VTuber karrieremet. De egyelőre ilyenekben nem hiszek.
You to do right now. And the thing is that the moment
Borzasztóan szkeptikus vagyok, de kíváncsi is.
self-image expands, because you're constantly reading that, reminding yourself of it, writing a new sentence to put in your brain, your income is going to follow that. The next limiting belief people have is thinking that they should buy liabilities instead of assets, maybe just not even knowing the difference. You were programmed to consume, not to build things, and that's why a lot of people stay broke. Okay, Robert Kiyosaki, he wrote Rich Dad Poor Dad, one of the first books I read on money. He put it very simply. He said the rich buy assets, the middle class buys liabilities thinking they are assets. Wealth is actually fairly simple. There are two categories, assets, liabilities. An asset puts money in your pocket. A liability takes money out of your pocket. And a lot of people spend their entire lives buying liabilities and wondering why they can't get ahead. They ask, can I afford this? Instead of, will this pay me back? What's my return on this? Now, how do you know the difference between an asset and liability? I'll break it down in the most common cases that you probably can relate to. Your car, liability, okay? Loses value immediately, has insurance, which is bullshit, gas, maintenance, it happens to it all the time. Your house you live in, liability. I know this is very controversial, but it's true. You have a mortgage, property tax, insurance, repairs. It doesn't generate income. The next one, a course that teaches you a skill, asset. Now, how does that an asset? Because it pays you back through increased income because you've invested in your skills. A rental property, an asset. It generates monthly income. A designer handbag, sadly a liability, okay? Loses value over time, doesn't, generate any income. I've had that discussion with Alex before. Equipment for your business, that is an asset if it helps you generate more revenue. It's a liability if you don't use it and just sits there. So when I started filtering all my purchases through that, is this an asset or a liability? My wealth compounded because I realized, I was like, my money, if I don't put into either of these things, actually is just a liability. Money sitting in the bank.
Nem mindegy, hogy mire költünk, mert a gazdag emberek azok arra költenek, ami több pénzt fog idővel nekik generálni, legyen szó akár kurzusokról, akár egy bérbeadott telekről, vagy házról, vagy akár elfejtettem, mik voltak a többi példák, de a lényeg az az, hogyha vagy egy munkaeszköz, amit tényleg használsz is, viszont ha nem ezekre költöd a pénzed javát, hanem valamire, ami elszipolyozza a pénzt az életedből, mint egy autó, mint egy ház, mint egy Gucci táska, stb., akkor valójában nagyon gyorsan nem lesz pénzed, már megint.
It's just deteriorating over time. So my money actually can become a liability if I don't do something with it. And that's when I really started learning how to invest in things that create money, in skills that create money, in learning that creates money, and in assets for my business that create money. Here's how you can start spending on what matters, okay? I want you to look at the last 10 purchases that you made. And then next to each one, simply write asset or liability and be honest with yourself. And then all I want you to do is just commit the next time that you buy something to just ask yourself, is this a liability or an asset? Does it put money in my pocket eventually? Or does it take money out of my pocket? The next limiting belief is one of the hardest ones to break. I know this because I still find myself breaking it on a continuous basis in the weirdest ways, but that is the scarcity mindset. Okay, this sounds crazy, but having a scarcity mindset actually can make you dumber. Here's the truth. You either operate from scarcity or abundance. And I don't want you to feel...
Na, két új szó, amiről már megint fogalmam sincs, hogy mik akarnak lenni.
Here's the truth. You either operate from scarcity...
Scarcity... Hiány, szűkösség vagy ritkaság. Egyébként a hiányban gondolkodásra azt mondta a csajszibogár, hogy egyenesen rombolja az agyat és butábbá tesz. Míg a bőséggel gondolkozás az meg segít. Vagy jóléttel gondolkozás. De hogy őszintén legyek, amúgy ez eddig nekem nagyon kétdimenziós, nagyon nem értem, mit akar vele.
Because as humans, we are supposed to operate from scarcity. Which one you choose to lean towards and train yourself into will determine how much money you make. The scarcity brain really just says there's never enough. I need to protect what I have. I need more, you know.
Sose elég az, ami van, meg kell védeni azt, ami van, mindig kell több.
1,000 years ago, it meant like somebody else has all the berries, and you're like, I need more berries because I need berries to feed my children in my pack, and like you're trying to get their berries because you're like, oh, you can't, there's only a certain number of berries and I need to make sure I get them and not you, because what if my family dies? That's how your brain's working, except it's working and thinking those thoughts about something that is not finite. It's something that's infinite. There's money being made every day. Scarcity actually changes your brain the more that you give into it. When you perceive resources as scarce that are not, like money, your cognitive bandwidth shrinks. Okay, you make worse decisions, you can't plan long term, and you only focus on immediate value. So we need to reprogram these thoughts. People with a scarcity mindset, they hoard money. They don't invest their money, right? They're only thinking short term, gotta survive, right? And they see every opportunity as a threat. If you can tap into training yourself to have an abundant mindset, everything will change for you, okay? Abundance mindsets, they say there's always more to create. I can afford to invest. I can afford to give some berries to my neighbor. I can take calculated risks because there are opportunities everywhere, and it is not a finite resource. It is seeing the world and all of the things it has to offer as an infinite pie rather than a finite one. So for me, for example, when I operated from scarcity, I was terrified to spend money on things that made my life better, made me better, made my business better. Because I felt like, what if I never make money again? What if it stops coming? What if something changes? Especially in the first few years of business, I would say the first 3, it was really hard for me to get out of that habit. And then the shift actually really happened when I realized money is almost infinite nowadays. Okay, but it is renewable. Skills, relationships, opportunities, those things compound. And so the more that I invest into myself, and the more I invest in my business, and the more I invest in my life, the more I get back tenfold. And I realized that I needed to train myself out of that habit. So I'll tell you the first thing I did. I hired a coach that was $40,000 a month when we were literally making $50,000 a month, right? And my scarcity brain was like, oh my God, you just started making this money, like you're gonna go broke, what if it stops tomorrow? My abundant brain was like, well, you made 10,000 a month, then 30,000 a month, now 40. Like next month, you're probably gonna make 100. And this skill is gonna help you make even more. And so I said, you know what? I have to just ignore that voice. I'm not gonna listen to it. I can have those thoughts. I don't need to listen to them and follow their directions. I can go with this one instead. And the cool thing is that that coach that I hired, that was $40,000 a month, was the reason I was able to scale one of my companies to the degree I did, which then I was able to sell the company for tens of millions of dollars. I'm sure you're thinking, okay, but how do you build an abundant mindset? Okay, here's what I want you to do. One is just become aware of when you make decisions from fear versus from possibility. Okay, when you think, I can't afford this. I want you to from fear versus from. One is just become aware
Figyeld meg, hogy
of when you
mikor cselekszel félelemből, ez eszembe mikor cselekszel abból, hogy adott egy lehetőség.
make decisions from fear versus from possibility. Okay, when you think, I can't afford this. I want you to reframe it.
Nem tudom megengedni
How could I
magamnak.
afford this?
Hogyan
Simple
engedhetném
thing.
meg
The moment you
magamnak
stop
ezt kéne
asking
így
yourself, how do I
áthúzalozni
protect
valahogy.
what I have, and you start asking yourself, how do I create more of what I have? That's when you start asking, I would say, like higher level intelligence questions, and you stop sabotaging your finances. And that's the thing I realized for myself. I was like, oh, I talk to myself like I'm poor, even when I had a lot of money, to be honest. And it wasn't until I realized that I was like really able to step into that next realm where I was like, I'm giving into like the survival mechanism that exists in all of us humans rather than retraining myself into this abundance mindset. The next step we have is loss aversion. Okay, I want to define this for y'all.
Eddig, hogy őszinte legyek, szerintem az editor, aki vágta a videót, ő viszi a pálmát a legjobban.
Loss aversion is why you keep losing.
De akkor is végignézem.
Avoiding risk and basically staying stuck where you are. Because if you want to break
Hát
this
csak
one,
azért is, mert nőből vagyok, és a nőknek az agyára nagyon durván tud hatni egyébként, akár csak egy kis, egy kis pozitív áthúzalozás gondolkodás terén.
belief, I want you to listen closely to what I'm about to explain. There was a winning research by, it was like Daniel Kahneman and some guy named Amos, okay? And it showed
Hosszú-hosszú évek adott, hogyha ezek finoman összeadódnak a buksimban, akkor előbb vagy utóbb épül belőlük egy önmagát ellátni képes teljes életnő, de legalábbis eddig valami hasonló lett az eredménye annak, hogy ilyen jellegű tartalmakat fogyasztottam, hogy egy kicsit jobban balanszolt vagyok a hozzám hasonlókhoz képest. Visszatértem, a tudást sikeresen elloptam, nagyobb büszke vagyok rád, Majdó. Prezentáció rossz volt az előadás, a szociálódás pedig sikertelen lett, óra előtt köszöntem, és kb. Ennyi volt, I see.
Losing feels twice as
Én is most próbálok tudást lopni. Csak én most ettől a hajagfeltöltéses nénitől.
as the pleasure of gaining $100. Losing feels twice as bad as winning feels. This is why, as humans, we hold losing stocks, you know, hoping that they're going to recover instead of just cutting our losses. We stay in dead-end jobs. We stay in bad relationships. We don't negotiate salaries. We avoid investing because the fear of loss outweighs the potential gain. So for me, for example, I stayed in a terrible job for probably 2 years longer than I should have because I felt like if I ended it, I was losing. But the funny thing is, like, staying in that job cost me way more. It was like money, mental energy, mental health. Who knows how many years off my life? Because the fear of loss was bigger than the logic of leaving. Your brain is designed to protect what you have, not to pursue what you could have. And that is why most people never actually take risks to build wealth. And then they say, oh, there's something wrong with me. I feel like, what if I lose? I'm like, there's nothing wrong with you. You're a human. I don't know how many times I have to say this. Like, we're all wired this way. I'm wired this way. You're wired this way. If I can do it, you can do it. Promise. Okay. So here's how you break that cycle. You need to reframe every loss as tuition. If you lost $50,000 on a business venture, abundance is going to say, you paid $50,000 for an education that will make you millions. When I changed that frame for myself, the loss stopped controlling me. In fact, recently I had a business decision and there was, you know, about a $3 million delta between what somebody was saying something was and somebody else was saying something was. And I ended up just going and agreeing with this person because I said, I think this is the right way forward. And I think that I actually should have defined terms earlier in the relationship to make it more clear. And I hadn't done that. And so, you know, when I was telling the story about this, it was just a week ago, I said, yeah, I paid $3 million to learn this lesson. And you know what? I would pay $3 million again to learn that lesson. The last limiting belief might be the most important one to break. And this is what we call the time trap. Most people spend their entire lives trying to save money. And that is what keeps them from making money, ironically. They forget that money multiplies, but time doesn't multiply, okay? And that is why you want to save time instead of saving money. So here's what I mean. If you make $100 an hour, doing anything worth less than $100 an hour is costing you money. So if you spend 2 hours cleaning your house, instead of hiring someone $50, you didn't save $50, you lost $150 because 2 hours at $100 minus the $50 you didn't pay. Wealthy people understand this. They buy time, they hire assistants, meal prep services, housekeepers, not because they're lazy, but because their time is worth more. They put it elsewhere. And guess what? I didn't just do this now when I had a lot of money. I did this when I first had barely any money. The first thing I hired was an assistant. When I was barely had enough money to hire 6 people for my team, I hired an assistant because I said, you know what? This is what rich people do. They hire people to get their time back. And if I have to like take care of this and that in the house, then like I'm not gonna be making money. And it was the best decision I ever made. Whereas poor and middle class, they tend to sell time, right? They're trading hours for dollars and do everything themselves to save money and then wonder why they're not getting ahead. And so when I started filtering every decision through, does this buy me time or cost me time? Everything changed. I stopped doing the $10 an hour tasks, hired help, I automated things, and I focused really on the work that was, you know, say $1,000 an hour. And you can calculate how much money you make per hour by asking yourself, how much money do I make in a year? And divide it by how many hours in a year there are. That's it. So like right now I know how much I make per hour. So then I'll ask myself, I even have it on one of my Asana cards for people. I'll say, is this worth, you know, $50,000 for Layla to do this if it's gonna take an hour? Now here's the thing. If you're able to do this, you will make more money in less time, which then you reinvest into more leverage. And then that leverage creates freedom for you because things that you have leverage on, they take less of your time and create money. They're how you get free, right? So how do you get out of that trap? Calculate your hourly rate, your annual income, divide it by 2,000 work hours. Then audit your time. Ask yourself, how many things am I doing that are not worth this? My favorite thing that somebody will do in one of my companies is they'll come to me and tell me that they're doing tasks that are not worth how much I'm paying them. My favorite thing in the world. I had someone do it recently. They said, look how many hours I'm spending on admin tasks. And they had actually gone through their calendar for the last 4 weeks and they calculated it. And I was horrified by how much time, and I immediately hired them an assistant, and they started literally 3 days ago. That's all, because anybody who thinks in terms of getting a good return, I'm gonna hire that person for somebody else as well. So here's my challenge for you. I want you to pick just one of the shifts from this video, and I want you to say, this is the one where I think I'm gonna get the most gains. I'm gonna start practicing it this week. And if you like this video, don't forget to check out my next one and subscribe.
Oké. Egy kicsit sokkolva vagyok, meg egy kicsit túlterhelődött a buksim, viszont sokat tanultunk. Tőle is, meg Márktól is, meg Wingy Youngtól is. Remélem, hogy ezeket a tanulságokat hazavisszük magunkkal. A pénzessel kapcsolatban fogok szerintem a legkevésbé emlékezni, de azért egy picit jól esett a lelkemnek kinda, sok jelentősége nem volt. És ez lesz a program, a póló design tervezés, mikor visszagyűjtünk. Ekkora lehet max maga a minta, és még nem tudom egyébként, hogy egyet vagy kettőt szeretnék csinálni, de majd még meglátjuk, gyerekek, jaj, mami. Belegondolok és túlterhelődök, szörnyű. Na, akkor csináljuk azt, hogy visszakapjátok a zenekérést a zenével. Oké, működik. Viszont jó volt az előző szám, úgyhogy még hallgathatjuk. No, akkor. Áttesszük passzívba a streamet, gyerekek, mert nem kell megsütni a pizzát. Csapatunk egy nagyon gyors rasit. Nehogy a megnézett videók miatt, hogyha mégis letiltanák véletlenül a vodokat, akkor a teljes vesszen el. Nice and